Hi, this is Rich Babcock, and welcome to the Steeple Report. Today we have Major Matthew Riley from the Salvation Army. Welcome, Matthew, or Major. How should I address you?
Either or, it's good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Um, it's kind of my feeling, and the reason I wanted to have you on is that besides, from time to time around holidays and other times, we see the Salvation Army in prominent places in the community collecting money. Beyond that, I don't think a lot of people know what the Salvation Army is and does and that kind of thing. So, I thought it'd be interesting to have a discussion with you, and hopefully my viewers and myself can learn more about the Salvation Army and the great things they do in communities all across the country and the world.
Right. We're in 133 countries, so we've been around for a long time. 1865. William Booth started up in the East End of London, but yeah, I'm fire away. I'll be glad to answer as many questions as I can.
Well, great. So why don't we start by you just kind of giving your own personal background, and then we'll get into what you're doing with this, what you have and are doing with the Salvation Army, and go from there.
All righty. Well, I was one of seven kids born and raised in upstate New York, Syracuse, and I had some good parents that took good care of us, and we still went astray. We were raised in the Catholic Church, and I was an altar boy, and I did my confirmation and things like that. But when I got into high school, I got involved in athletics, and then I met some guys, and I got involved in the wrong things, and kind of went sideways for a while. Was involved with drugs and drinking and party life, if you will, and didn't really want to stay that way or in that place. And I didn't know, being raised in a poor family, I didn't really know how to get out of the place I was in. So what I did is I joined the military. I figured that's a way out. And learned quickly when I joined the military that you can't run away from your problems. And in the military, I became more of a drinker than a drug user. And I ended up drinking a six-pack to a pint of liquor every night just to go to sleep. I had a real bad problem, and it was accepted, drinking in the military. So, well, long story short, I was walking across a field one day and basically looked up into the sky and said, God, if you're real, change my life, because I don't want to live this way.
You knew you were on the wrong path, and looking for the right path, it sounds like.
Yeah, and God had put some key people in place along the path. I didn't recognize them at first, but from that moment on, God delivered me from the alcohol and the drugs. And now there were other issues that I had to work through, and I began reading my Bible, and I met this wonderful young lady who I have no understanding of why she fell in love with me, but she did. And we've been married 35 years since, and she shared Jesus with me and told me that he loved me. And I laughed at her at first, but I found out that he did in fact love me. And, you know, 37 years later, here I am. I've been living for the Lord, and just now serving him. I think it's 33 years in the Salvation Army as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
So, what branch of the military did you go into?
I tried to join the Navy, but I ended up in the Army.
Okay.
I had an appointment for a medical thing, and I had a little rash on my chest, and they said, you can't get in the Navy with fungus. And I said, are you kidding me? And I was really discouraged because I needed to get out of that town. I needed to get away. And I told the doctor, I said, well, if you're not going to let my fungus in, I'm going to go join the army. And I walked across the hall and asked them if they'd take my fungus. And of course, they did. So I spent my military time in the U.S. Army.
And then how long did you serve?
3 active years and 3 inactive.
Well, by the time that this gets put up on YouTube, it'll be later, but we're actually filming this right around Memorial Day. So it's whoops, and we're both in Virginia Beach, so an F-18 is going over my head. I don't know if my microphone picked that up, but so thank you for your service, sir.
I appreciate it. My grandfather fought in World War One, my father in World War Two, my brother and my wife and I, and we consider ourselves patriots of this great country.
Well, and many of us also concur with that. So, following the military and meeting your wife, was she already involved with the Salvation Army, or was that something that came later?
No, she was. She's a seventh generation Salvationist. Her family goes all the way back to the second general, I believe, William Booth's sister, I believe, or daughter, Evangeline. And anyways, when they were up in the trenches during the war, her, I think it's a grandfather's sister that was one of the what they called a lassie. What that meant is she went up to the foxholes where the servicemen were and delivered paper and pen and often wrote for the men and brought donuts and coffee, those types of things to the soldiers who were on the front line. So she bleeds Army colors.
Yeah, it's interesting. Many people may not know, but the Salvation Army is not necessarily just stateside during peacetime. Every major conflict of the 20th century and now in the 21st century, they're there and active. I think when I was doing a little reading, I think one of the famous groups was called the Donut Girls, and I think that was in World War One. And they brought donuts, which is where the nickname came from, but they were there to listen and pray with and support a lot of the troops in hot zones.
Yeah. Well, that's where she hails from.
It's amazing. So what have you done in your career with the Salvation Army, and is it a full-time career, or is this something that you do next to a more traditional career? Maybe explain that, how that all works.
Well, it's not a career as such. It's a calling, and many of people have come in as a career and have left. I believe, in my personal experience, my wife and I were in a church service, Salvation Army church service, and basically heard the call of God and answered it, and went to our pastor and said, we feel God's calling us to the ministry of the Salvation Army. And of course, back, it's not as rigorous back 30 some years ago as it is today. But we had to go through quite an ordeal to make sure that we were physically and mentally capable to handle the rigorous day-to-day ministry of the Salvation Army. And the Army is, I use terms like for everybody to understand, like, ministry and church, but the Salvation Army is a spiritual army. And William Booth, back in the 1865, or probably a little later in 1880 or whatever, decided that we'd stick with a quasi-military outfit and have terminology like majors and captains, but we're pastors, ordained, fully ordained, and we marry and we bury and we, do everything in between, teach
You
and preach.
you
And
do your educational work at um, seminaries, or is that all internal? How does that educational part work of that to leading up to ordination?
well, back when I was ordained, it's a 2 year, 365 days out of the year seminary in Atlanta, Georgia, for the Southern Territory. There are 4 territories with 4 seminary schools, and they're all 2 years, but they're not like 6 months and you go home. It's 365 days, and basically. After that, you're a cadet in training during seminary days, and then you become a lieutenant in your first assignment. And then after 5 years, you become a captain and so forth. But that's where all of the schooling is done: doctrine, Old Testament, New Testament, theology, all the regular stuff that you'd see in another setting.
What I find interesting, in looking at some of the history, is that William Booth had some interesting ideas that, you know, well, he seemed to use different terminology that could be a little confusing for many until you really get into it a little bit more, in that, you know, at one point I think he said we're not a church, but we're something else that comes alongside of churches, but it has a very strong Methodist and Wesleyan tradition to it. And then one of the, I don't know if you'd call it a criticism, one of the observations is that what distinguishes them from some other, especially Methodist or Wesleyan churches, is that they don't do baptisms and don't do Holy Communion and things of that nature. So they didn't want to get into, I guess, the arguments because there's so many different denominations within the membership of the Salvation Army, that if they were to say child baptism versus adult baptism, it would create more conflict. So I guess the decision was made, follow your own beliefs, and and we'll support what you do with a church outside of the Army. Is that close to explaining it properly?
Yeah, they basically we became a evangelistic movement, and William Booth's intentions were to win the world for Jesus, and to go out and find the worst and the lost and the least, and to share salvation with them. His intention was never to become a matter of fact. His wife said the thing she feared the most was that we would settle down into church measures. And he said that what we need to do is leave the sacraments to the churches and continue to stay focused on evangelism, and continue. A movement that settles down and becomes stagnant dies. And he wanted to continue to be an evangelistic movement. And of course, we believe in baptism. We just don't get hung up in what we believe. Like, as an organization, we don't baptize anybody in our facilities because of our rules, bylaws, etc., whatever you want to call them, and because of the focus of who we are. But I've taken many of people down to the river and baptized them. And so it's not that we don't believe in the Holy Eucharist. It's just that our focus was in a different area, and it has remained true to that all these years later.
But at the same time as people are encouraged to continue being members of churches outside of the Army, if I understand it correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you do have buildings. You don't call them churches, though, I think, that you do worship in. Is that right?
Yeah, sticking with the quasi-military language, we call them a corps, a CORPS, kind of um, like a battalion, if you will. So our church members, if you will, so if I can use that word for us, would we're soldiers, not members. So like in a Baptist church or a Methodist church, we'd have a members role. In the Salvation Army, we have a soldier's role. People become alongside us. They believe with our doctrine and the way that we think, and they want to be a part of it, and they become a soldier instead of a member. But literally, they're very similar.
It almost reminds me of something that my pastor has often said, um, at least, philosophically, that it doesn't sound, how do I say that? So he often says that church on Sundays is the locker room, and the other 6 days a week is the game. That's where you practice your faith, and it almost sounds like what you're kind of saying is, you come together as a core, to be together and solidify your bonds together, and then you're sent out amongst the wolves, if you will.
Yep. Yeah, it's very similar to your experience, and we come and encourage one another. I'm fully ordained. I preach every Sunday morning. We teach Sunday school to the babies all the way up to the seniors. And it's a time, we feel like we are very much part of the body of Christ. We just function a little differently. And, the Methodist Church is who we were birthed from. The Methodist. William Booth was a Methodist itinerant preacher and felt like he saw people under a bridge. And this is not a slam on the Methodist Church, but he wanted to do more than what they were doing at the time. And in order to do that, he had to step away from that setting. And his idea was to win souls and send them back to their churches. But when they went in London, in that particular area, if you went to a church and you didn't have the means to buy a pew or have your place, you had to sit behind a curtain or stand behind in the back. And these people felt like they were being shunned in their own house of worship. So they came back to Booth. And that's how Booth began by, he'd do open airs outside in the streets, and he'd go out to the bars and share the gospel. And in many places, we still do some of those things today. It's easier now, live streaming, and you can reach a lot more people. But it's still the same concept, is to win souls and send them back. And let's just go back to revisit that Eucharist and the baptism. If we're teaching them our thing, we're trying to not maybe raise them up in our way of thinking, instead of staying true to Booth's win souls to the kingdom and send them back to their church so they can be effective in their house of worship where they grew up, etc.
Which really reminds me it came later, but kind of the Billy Graham model, where, he would go out and he'd have his large gatherings, but he wasn't a church. He would send them back to local church and partner with local churches and say, these people have come to Christ. Now it's your job to disciple them and love them and adopt them as part of your local families.
Yeah, and in many places and many countries in the world, we come alongside the rest of the body of Christ to do social work and to help, where we can, and they come alongside of us. And matter of fact, volunteer in many of our social programs, our shelters, our rehabilitation centers, our homes for the aging, our hospitals overseas that we have in Africa and different places. It's incredible how we can't do it on our own, obviously. that's a no-brainer. But when people come alongside us, it's a really cool way how the body of Christ all comes together, and everybody's using their gifts and their wisdom and their experience to help meet human need wherever that is.
So, in terms of your own, I know we distinguish between calling and career, but humor me, for your time with Salvation Army, how many different places have you been posted?
Oh boy, let me see. I think it's 8, and we're getting ready to be in our 9th. We're getting ready to move June 20th to Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is that a congratulations, I assume?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in that it's a bigger appointment than here in Virginia Beach, but we love Virginia Beach, man. We've really grown to love the people and to enjoy the ministry that we've done. And I'm the guy. I don't have a little tag on the back of my car, but I love salt life, man. I love to fish. I love to
Right,
swim. I love to be out on the boat. I love to be just sitting on the beach. But when God calls, you go, and
right.
make no bones about it. Where I know that Georgia's going to be great, and one of the benefits there is he's moving me closer to my family, my kids and grandkids. So it's kind of hard to be upset about that.
So, how long have you been in Virginia, and where were you before here?
Before Virginia Beach, I was in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and when we moved here 2 years ago, right before COVID, and it's been a difficult
Yeah, I
two
was just going
years.
to say you came at a very interesting time.
It's been difficult. Not only did we suffer this thing with everybody else in COVID, but along with it, my wife developed breast cancer and then had to have a total repair of her shoulder from rotor cuff. It was completely, I don't even know how she did it, but when they got in there, it was completely destroyed and she had to have that rebuilt. But some personal things along with COVID that everybody else has gone through. We both got COVID. I was sick for about 8, 10 days, and my wife was sick for about almost 20. So,
Well,
but it's been good too. We've learned a lot. God's stretched us, and
well, I,
we've
I pray that your wife's fight with the cancer will end up being very successful. How's she doing?
she's doing good. She's okay. She's I'd like to say a tough old bird, but I better leave the old bird thing off there. She's tough.
I don't know how to do that beep thing they do on TV, but but as I said, I encourage anybody who watches this to pray for you both and for her healing. Yeah, I also understand the shoulder thing. I have a big Frankenstein scar on my left shoulder for having that reconstructed back in the 80s. I think now, I have like a 6-inch scar. I think now it'd be two like little half-inch scars. So it is,
Three little dots.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
it. And it's amazing what they can do now.
yeah, yeah. So why don't you give us a little insight into what your responsibilities have been here in Virginia Beach, and then maybe we could talk about, what's coming up for you in Atlanta.
Well, when we moved from Parkersburg to here and got the word, I was immediately a little apprehensive. I was 60 at the time and thought, I'm going from a core to an adult rehabilitation center. And it was a little, it was daunting. It was like, okay, God, can I really do this? I'm 60 years old and I'm starting to get set in my ways. And now you're going to take me somewhere and teach me something new. Um, and there's a lot more responsibility. We had 4 stores before COVID, and we had probably right before COVID, we had 106 men in the program out of 114 beds. And so things were going well, and a lot of responsibility. And this isn't a rehabilitation. Men that come here are either alcoholics or drug abusers. They've been in and out of prison or jail multiple times, the majority of them. And basically it's a spiritual program and also a work therapy program. And, we have counselors, and, we help them get GED. We help them work on job training. We help them, get back in the groove of working during the day and staying busy and keeping their mind occupied. And many of them are very talented. It's incredible the gifts that they have, but just struggle with addiction. And so for the last 2 years, we've been trying to keep the stores. All the money that comes into our stores is what keeps our resident program running and helps us pay for the staff. And it takes a lot of money to feed these guys. It really and to keep the air on and all that. But we had 4 stores coming into COVID. We lost 2 of them. One is operational right now in Virginia Beach Boulevard and doing well. And we still have another over in the Green, I think it's Greenbrier up by the Hooters.
Well, you could save some souls there.
Amen, amen. They've been very gracious to us,
Good.
allowing us to park in part of their parking lot when we
That's
get
great.
a lot of customers. So it's been a balancing of helping a man change his life and turn it around, and then the business aspect of running stores and trucks and routes and all those types of things, and warehouses with it.
Right.
But every bit of it is everything that the men, when they come in, and everything they do, every one of them is so important to the next guy coming in the door. And it's just a great ministry. See a lot of guys give their lives to the Lord and rededicate their hearts. And after they're finished with the program, we try to hook them back up with their churches and their families. And they come in beaten down and hopeless, and they don't think they'll ever get back with their wife, or their kids don't ever want to talk to them again. And when they do, it's so rewarding and gratifying to see God work in that situation. But that's kind of what we're doing right now.
Well, that is tremendous, and that is definitely God's work. And I've spoken to a few different people doing related things locally. I spoke with the director of the Judeo-Christian Outreach Center, and they work a lot with housing and lifting up and getting people back on their feet, who are also suffering from different kinds of addiction. And it's one of the most special callings I think there is, because to me it's starting with a premise that there is value in every human life, and nobody is to be thrown away. That it's our calling as Christians to reach out to those that need reaching out to and lifting up.
Well, what are we doing if all we ever do is go to church on Sunday and Bible study Wednesday night, and we soak up everything that the pastor has for us, and then we don't put it into action? It's kind of a stupid thing to do, really, in my mind. We're God's. First of all, everyone is created in the image of God, and there's value no matter how messy a person's life is. And I think that's the crux of the problem. If you're going to disciple somebody, or if you're going to get involved, it's so messy. You don't just deal with one individual, you deal with all their baggage. And it's sometimes hard. It's heartbreaking sometimes. Financially, it costs. And I'm not pointing a finger at anybody or thinking that, oh, look at me, you know what I'm doing, because there are a lot of ministries out there that are doing the same thing as I'm doing and similar things that I'm doing. I'm just merely pointing out is that wherever we are, whatever we're doing for the Lord, it shouldn't just be sitting soaking stuff up. You gotta release that stuff and allow the love of God to flow through you into another individual's life.
Yeah, and that's what I was referring to earlier, where my pastor said, Sunday is just the locker room to prepare you to go out and do the work of God. And as you've said, you're speaking my language when you talk about, we're born in the image of God. People are probably thinking I'm a broken record, but I constantly refer to Imago Dei and how, we
Amen.
must look at others as children of God. And if we do that, then we're recognizing that they all have value. And, we have to, we're, the fruit of our faith is to go out and not only evangelize and share the word, but recognize that people need lifting up, maybe even before they can even talk about having that religious discussion, if you will, that they just need to get past that survival part of their life,
Yep.
where they can even think about anything but a roof over their head and putting some food in their belly, and so the work you're doing, I think is so important.
It's hard. Sometimes the biggest decision they have to make is coming through the door. They have no self-worth coming in. Everybody's beating them down. Family has finally gotten to a point where they won't let them back in, or they won't help them anymore. And they have to show tough love. And if you're struggling with somebody that you love in addiction, then the quicker you get to the tough love, the quicker they're going to have an opportunity to recover, because every time you make a way for them in their addiction, the longer they stay in the addiction. And so you have to cut them off, and that's hard. I've seen just one quick testimony. I'll call him LG. He came in. He was an alcoholic. He went into the program. He went through the program, came out. He went and got drunk right away, and he came to me and he said, I need one more chance. I know I can do it if you let me. So we sent him back. Man, that guy was changed and transformed by the power of the Holy Ghost. God washed him in the blood, and the second time he came out, he was a man of God. That give the shirt off his back, the shoes off his feet. He was at the church every day helping people, and I mean, he ended up dying in my arms. He had a massive heart attack. But man, as I held him there, I was praising God, thanking God that he had the chance he had and made the most of it. And there's so many guys out there that come in, if everybody in the world's beating you down, you don't need the church to beat you down. And it's a tough spot to be in. It's sometimes we look at people and we say, well, they did it to themselves. Yeah, they did. But we gotta give them a hand up. We need to reach out. I remember, what wasn't it Peter when he was walking on the water that needed a hand up?
Yep.
And Jesus pulled him right to him.
Said you got to
And
believe.
yeah. So whatever really went on, if he put his eyes on the storm, or maybe a wave got between them, there's lots of thoughts on it, but all I know, he started sinking, and Jesus reached out to him and pulled him up and helped him walk back to the boat. And simply in those terms, that's what we do as men and women of God. We lift people back up and we help them back to the boat. And what greater ministry, and what, it doesn't have to be in a Salvation Army ARC. It can be, anywhere.
Yeah, I did an interview on this channel with somebody that I grew up with in New Jersey, and now he's in Northwest Virginia. Well, not west. He's west of DC, but he's in Virginia, and he had his own struggles with drug and alcohol addiction, and but he was saved, and he's had some struggles even since. But he has a congregation that is predominantly for and supporting people that have had addiction problems in their life. And so it was a really interesting discussion we had about people are going to fall back. Addiction is a nasty business for people, but you know as a spiritual leader, and as their pastor, he tries to come alongside them and support them and get them the help they need so that they can keep moving forward as best they can.
Amen. Well, and we have, I mean, I'm not going to say that we have um, a lot of victories. We have many victories, but we have many people that are including myself, that God delivered. Many people that come and help us with, and there's a lot of debate on AA and NA and CA and these programs. They're very helpful, but are they the way to Christ? No. Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and no man cometh unto the Father except through me." John 14:6. And so, but these other programs and these people that come from the community that have gone through addiction and have been able to sit around a table and talk about how they got help and how they leaned on this one or that one, is very beneficial. So we use every tool that we can to try and help a man to get back. And we've had many men come through our program that have made it. So we've had many that haven't, and we've had many that have come in, didn't make it, and died, overdosed, or it's a shame, but that's the heartache of the program. You spend so much time with an individual, and then they slip and fall, and they've overdosed, and families crushed, and our hearts are broken, but you just have to pick the pieces up and go on to the next guy, and it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, you emotionally and spiritually invest yourself in these people, and hope that each one is a success. But like they say in AA, it's one day at a time. And I think, in the case of what you're doing, it's one soul at a time. You just try to lift one at a time, and hope you're doing it the best you can for them, and hope that, what you're doing pays off, and they're able to get past their problems. But I think 100% record would be probably too much to ask for.
Yeah. I just really kind of hang my hat on the scripture where Jesus comes back after Lazarus has passed, and he looks at Mary and Martha and says, "Didn't I tell you that if you would have believed, you would see the glory of God?" And I have to believe that I'm going to see the glory of God, the manifest presence of God in their lives. And they're somewhere deep down inside there's a man that's made in the image of God, and God knows the goodness in him. And somehow we've got to bring it out, and we do the best we can, and we just believe by faith, and we work as hard as we can, like you said. And none of us are perfect either. And it is what it is.
I often talk about, and I'm going to forget the actual psalm, but it was a psalm about the lamp upon my feet. Your word is a lamp upon lamp on the path to my feet. I forget the exact wording, but and I remember in a Bible study, somebody said that a good way to think about that is that a lamp typically only shines a short distance, around itself. And so the act of walking into darkness is where your faith is, that the light will continue to shine through the darkness, and you have to keep moving forward. And that's kind of what I kind of imagined when you were saying, that Sometimes it's shining a very weak spotlight into a very dark cave, but we got to keep moving forward and trying to bring light to darkness, and that takes a tremendous amount of faith that I can only say thank you for doing what you're doing. I think it's tremendous.
Well, I do want to put a plug in for our community.
Please, I want to hear more about what you're going to do in Atlanta too.
Okay, well, we survive on the donations that we receive from our community, and obviously it takes all our men to move that product, but our community has done very well by the Salvation Army to help support us. If I could say one thing that we need is clothing, all types, but the community here has been tremendous supporting us in our adventure with these men. It's been really wonderful to see.
Well, I'll put something up following the video about where they can donate, where they can both, I guess, money and clothing, and where the store locations are. If you'll just send me that info.
Okay.
So what does the Lord got planned for you down in Hotlanta?
Well, down in Atlanta, we've got 4 stores. We have that are very far apart. So there's a transportation kind of a situation that takes some maneuvering around all the traffic and all that. And right now there's about 80 to 90 men in the program that services about 160 men. But it's been tough getting men in the program because of all the stimulus checks and the unemployment the way it's been, and the guys don't even have to go out and look for work to get money. I know a 72-year-old that's on disability that's getting unemployment now. So I got it made. So Social Security, disability, and unemployment. My goodness, no reason to go work.
It makes it hard for him to commit to something that's going to be hard work to overcome some of the things that are beating him down.
Well, and that's the problem we're having all over in the United States right now, is that, and I know it's starting to turn with the unemployment stuff, but it's been real hard for a man to come in and get help when he's getting money to keep his stuff going. And I know that, there's those that are saying and thinking, well, that's his right to do what he wants with his money. And yeah, I agree. There's no qualms there, but you keep feeding the problem doesn't get better, it gets bigger. And so, but down in Atlanta, it's a bigger program, 160 men to opposed to 114 here, and 4 stores opposed to 2 here. A lot of logistical problems and so forth. Donations, when you got 4 stores, you need more donations than we need for what we've got.
Right.
So we're gonna have to figure that out as well. But it's going to be a challenge. We're excited about it, but the main thing is going to be the main thing. And wherever my wife and I go, we have 2 rules. We're going to love the people that are there, and we're going to be good stewards of whatever God places before us. And I have for 35 years gone with those 2 rules, that if we love people the way Christ loves us, and we are good stewards, somehow, some way, even when I don't understand how it's going to happen, God provides. And we're excited. It's going to be a great challenge. It's a great opportunity, and who knows what's going to happen.
So, do you go from major to colonel, or what above you, and how does that work with those different ranks? You explained the lower ranks.
Well, I got something showing up there. Sorry. The ranking is basically just years of service, all the way up to major, where I'm at, and then the lieutenant colonel, And those are all decided based on positions. And those are typically the leadership of the Army, like the lieutenant colonel is a territorial leader, uh, and so forth. And colonels are somewhere after that. I don't pay attention to them all though. But matter of fact, a lot of folks ask me this: how much do you get paid? Well, the Salvation Army pastor doesn't make a salary. The Salvation Army, like here in Virginia Beach, through donations and through endowments and different things, many, many years ago, bought a home for the parsonage. So I came and lived here in the parsonage that belongs to the Salvation Army in Hampton Roads.
Like
I
many
drive,
pastors, right? Okay.
yeah, I drive their vehicles. I don't own any cars. I don't own a house. And what we get to help us along are what the Salvation Army calls an allowance. So, and when you're younger and you have children, the allowance is bigger. So when you get to be a guy my age in the early 60s and all the kids are gone and so forth, all those extra things are taken away. And so the general of the Salvation Army, he and his wife are the leaders of the International Salvation Army, and they get paid the least. And
Wow.
a lot of folks think, well, we make big money and we're living high off the hog. And I'm thinking, I'd like to see where that is, but
That would be that would probably be the downfall of the Salvation Army if it came out that all the officers were living high on the hog. I think that kind of goes against the whole spirit of it.
it does. I mean, the majority of the people, I mean, sin has got no boundaries. There's, you know, whether you're poor or you're rich. We deal with a lot of folks that struggle with poverty and health issues and different things. But some of our core uh, church, if you will, whatever, are large, have wealthy people, have good, hardworking people that have just joined up with us and have become soldiers in the army of the Lord in this part of the army of the Lord to help us with our ministry. And so we've got all kinds of people. We're a real melting pot.
Well, just wanted to just say thank you for spending some time with us. It was illuminating for me, and I hope for our viewers. Um, Again, I'm praying for your wife's health, and
Appreciate it.
because cancer can be a real challenge, and thank God she has faith because she's that'll help strengthen her through the battle, and you too, because you're going to be there every step of the way.
Oh yeah.
So,
It,
but
it's sometimes I'm not, I think it's hard on the individual that has cancer. My dad and my mom both succumbed to radiation and
mine too,
treatments.
mine too.
And so I know it's very difficult on them. It takes a toll, but it does take a toll on caregivers and close family, people that are far away. They mourn like they should, but they have no idea what it means to take care of somebody that
No.
is that sick
Right,
all the time.
right.
It's difficult.
It is physically, emotionally, spiritually. Yeah, it's a heavy weight. So I pray for you both. I thank you for spending time with us, and congratulations and good luck in Atlanta.
Well, thank you, Rich. I really appreciate you allowing me the honor of being on and to be able to share with whoever sees this what we do and who we are and any questions, get in touch with your local Salvation Army.
Right, right. Well, I think it's wonderful. I think you represent the Salvation Army tremendously. So thank you for your time. And I wish you were sticking around so we could actually get to know each other. But you never
Absolutely.
know.
Yep. Well, if I'll be down in Atlanta, but you know, the internet is incredible. I can do a YouTube from down there and we can catch
Well,
up and see how things are going.
maybe we should do a follow-up after you get your feet wet down there.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Thank you, Major.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay, take care.
God bless.